Something massive is happening beneath West Africa's surface, and most people have no idea. Vast underground power grids are forming across the region, connecting countries, fueling industries, and deciding who truly holds the future of Africa's energy. But here's the question nobody's asking: who really controls them? From Ghana's high-voltage corridors to Nigeria's deep-sea energy cables, and the hidden data centers of Senegal, this is the story of power, politics, and control, literally buried beneath our feet. Over the past 2 decades, West Africa has been quietly weaving one of the most ambitious energy systems in the developing world, an interconnected underground grid that links 14 countries from Mauritania to Nigeria. This is the West African Power Pool, or WAPP. On paper, it's a cooperative project run by the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. But the deeper you dig, the more you realize it's also a geopolitical chessboard. The idea is simple: share electricity across borders, stabilize supply, and reduce costs. But behind the clean blueprints and international logos, there's competition between world powers, corporations, and local elites, each fighting to control Africa's next great resource: energy independence. Now, when we talk about underground power grids, we're not just talking about local cables. We're talking about an expanding web of high-voltage direct current transmission lines, buried below cities, forests, and even coastal seabeds. Nigeria's north-to-south HVDC corridor, for example, links power generated in the north, from hydro dams and gas plants, to the booming industrial zones near Lagos. In Ghana, similar underground lines connect Akasambo and Bui hydropower plants to export stations near the Ivory Coast border. These are Africa's real veins, pumping electricity instead of blood. And whoever controls them controls trade, manufacturing, even military defense capabilities. So who built these grids? And who owns them? Here's where things get interesting. Much of the financing and engineering came from outside Africa. The World Bank, the European Investment Bank, and the China Exim Bank are all major backers. European firms like ABB, Schneider Electric, and Siemens provided much of the equipment. Meanwhile, Chinese giants like Huawei Power, State Grid Corporation of China, and TBA installed advanced smart grid systems. That means while African governments technically own the infrastructure, the digital backbone, the software, data, and maintenance systems often remain under external management. In short, it's Africa's electricity, but not always Africa's control. Let's zoom into Nigeria, the largest economy in Africa and the nerve center of the WAPP grid. Nigeria currently generates over 12,000 megawatts of potential electricity, but only about 5,000 actually reach the grid daily. Why? Because of transmission inefficiencies, and more subtly, the concentration of power at a few foreign-linked control hubs. One such hub is the Transmission Company of Nigeria, which partners with Siemens and Chinese contractors for grid expansion. Beneath the surface, literal underground transmission tunnels carry high-voltage cables through Abuja and Lagos, secured, monitored, and remotely controlled from hybrid systems that aren't fully Nigerian-built. So when blackouts happen, it's not just a technical failure. It's a signal of dependency, a reminder of who holds the off switch. Across the border, Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire are positioning themselves as energy brokers for the subregion. Ghana's Volta River Authority exports electricity to Togo, Benin, and Burkina Faso via underground and overhead lines. Côte d'Ivoire, with its strong natural gas network, powers several neighbors too. But both nations rely heavily on European financing and imported equipment. Analysts say Ghana's energy independence is only 60% domestic. The rest, from control systems to transformers, is still imported. In Côte d'Ivoire, the story is similar. Local engineers run the day-to-day operations, but software and grid analytics are handled by foreign consultants. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room: China. Beijing's South Belt and Road Initiative isn't just about ports and railways. It is also about energy corridors. In West Africa, China is building data-driven smart grids that allow real-time monitoring and even remote adjustment of power flows. In Nigeria, the 330 kV Abuja transmission line project was completed by Chinese contractors. In Ghana, Huawei Power's grid management systems link rural solar farms directly to central command centers. These systems make power distribution more efficient, but also give China unprecedented insight into Africa's energy networks. So, when we ask who really controls them, the answer might be buried not just under the ground, but in Beijing's data centers. Modern grids aren't just cables and transformers. They're digital ecosystems filled with sensors, telemetry, and encrypted control units. Every watt of power now produces data, and data, in 2025, is power. Countries like Nigeria, Ghana, and Senegal are realizing that whoever owns the data servers that monitor these grids can influence pricing, access, and even shut down protocols. That's why you're seeing a new race, not just for physical power lines, but for energy sovereignty. African engineers and data scientists are working together to reclaim control of these systems through locally developed software and encryption. Across the continent, a new generation of African engineers is fighting back, quietly, strategically. In Ghana, a team at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology is developing AI-driven grid management tools. In Nigeria, young developers at the National Power Institute are writing code to replace imported grid software. In Senegal, women engineers at Senelec are deploying underground fiber links for localized control. These are Africa's unsung heroes, the ones rebuilding sovereignty line by line, circuit by circuit. So what's next for West Africa's underground power networks? By 2030, analysts predict a fully unified power grid stretching from Dakar to Lagos. But the fight for who gets to control it, Africa, China, or the West, is just beginning. If Africa succeeds in securing both hardware and software control, it could mark the biggest shift in post-colonial history, from energy dependence to energy dominance. But if control remains foreign, the region risks trading one kind of colonialism for another, this time digital and infrastructural. So, the next time your lights flicker in Lagos, Accra, or Dakar, remember that voltage might be running through a cable buried deep beneath your city, controlled by a system thousands of miles away. The underground grids of West Africa are no longer just about electricity. They're about control, sovereignty, and the future of a continent determined to stand on its own feet. This is not just a story of power, it's a story of who holds it.